Naomi had stopped counting the nights she'd spent shivering on concrete. The October wind cut through Philadelphia like a knife, slicing between the buildings on Market Street and finding her huddled against the brick wall. She pulled the thin gray blanket tighter around her shoulders, but it did nothing against the cold that had settled deep in her bones. 6 months. It had been 6 months since she'd slept in a real bed, since she'd known the feeling of safety, since she'd had anywhere to call home. Welcome back to the channel. Before we dive deeper into Naomi's story, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it over there? I'm curious to know who's here with us right now. It hadn't always been this way. 18 months ago, Naomi Brooks was a third-year nursing student at Temple University. She had a future mapped out, a small apartment she shared with her mother, and a 12-year-old brother named Elijah, who still believed she could do anything. Then came the fire. The investigation would later confirm it was faulty wiring in their landlord's poorly maintained building. But by then, it was too late. Elijah died in his sleep from smoke inhalation. Her mother survived physically, but something inside her had died that night too. Naomi dropped out of school to take care of her. She worked 3 cleaning jobs, trying to pay medical bills and keep them afloat. But grief is a thief that steals more than memories. 6 months after Elijah's funeral, her mother simply gave up. The doctor called it a heart attack. Naomi knew better. It was a broken heart that had finally stopped beating. With no family, no savings, and no way to pay rent, Naomi found herself on the street with only a backpack, a few changes of clothes, and the small silver nursing pin her mother had given her when she'd started school. "For my daughter, the future nurse," the inscription read. She wore it every day, pinned inside her cleaning uniform, hidden close to her heart. Despite everything, Naomi refused to disappear. Every morning at 5 a.m., she woke from her cardboard bed on Market Street. She walked 6 blocks to the 24-hour burger joint where she washed up in the bathroom sink, changing into the cleaning uniform she kept carefully folded in a plastic bag. By 6 a.m., she was at her first job, mopping floors at an office building downtown. Nobody knew she was homeless. Nobody knew that the composed, efficient woman who cleaned their offices slept on the street. She told herself the same thing every morning while looking in that bathroom mirror. I'm not what happened to me. I'm what I choose to become. But life changes when nobody expects it. Meanwhile, Derek Ashford was living a completely different life. At 38, he was everything Philadelphia's business magazines loved to write about. The self-made tech billionaire, the visionary CEO of Ashford Technologies, the man with the Midas touch. His company had revolutionized data security systems, making him one of the wealthiest men in Pennsylvania. He had the sprawling Chestnut Hill estate, the luxury cars, the respect of every boardroom in the country. But Derek's home was a mausoleum of memories and grief. 3 years ago, his wife Rebecca had died of ovarian cancer. She'd fought for 2 years, and Derek had used every resource, every connection, every dollar he had to try to save her. In the end, money couldn't buy what mattered most. Since her death, he'd thrown himself into work with an almost desperate intensity. 18-hour days, 7 days a week. His assistant, Monica, had stopped suggesting he take breaks. His brother Julian had stopped inviting him to family dinners. Everyone had learned that Derek Ashford was a man running from his own life. If you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like you're alive but not really living, hit that like button. This story is about to show us what happens when 2 people running from pain finally collide. On this particular October evening, Derek sat alone in his glass-walled office on the 42nd floor of the Ashford Technologies building, staring out at the Philadelphia skyline. The city lights glittered like false promises. He'd just closed a $50 million deal, and all he felt was empty. His phone buzzed. Monica's text. "Sir, it's 11 p.m. Please go home." Home. The word felt like a lie. That mansion wasn't a home. It was just an expensive place where he slept a few hours before coming back to the office. But Monica was right. He was exhausted. Derek grabbed his coat and headed to the parking garage. The rain started as he merged onto the freeway. Soft at first, then heavy, drumming against the windshield of his Mercedes like an accusation. He was driving through an emptier part of the city, past Market Street, when the car made a sound it had never made before. A grinding, mechanical wheeze, and then simply died. Derek coasted to the curb, rain now pounding the roof. He sat there for a moment in the silence, then pulled out his phone to call his driver. "I'm on Market Street near 15th. Car broke down. How long?" 45 minutes, Mr. Ashford. Traffic's bad with the rain." Derek sighed and ended the call. 45 minutes sitting in a dead car. He looked out the window, and that's when he saw her. A woman, curled against a brick building about 20 feet away. She was wrapped in a blanket, a water bottle sitting beside a piece of cardboard, completely still, despite the rain beginning to soak through her makeshift shelter. Derek sat there, hand on the door handle, frozen by indecision. He could stay in the car. He could look away. He could pretend he hadn't seen her. But something about the way she lay there, not defeated, but enduring, made him think of Rebecca. Rebecca, who'd faced every chemo session with quiet courage. Rebecca, who'd never given up even when giving up would have been easier. Derek grabbed the umbrella from his back seat, opened the door, and stepped into the rain. "Now, here's where I need you to pay attention, because what happens in the next 60 seconds is going to change both their lives forever. And if you're not subscribed yet, you're about to see exactly why you should be." Derek's dress shoes splashed through puddles as he crossed the empty street, umbrella raised against the driving rain. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd first thought, maybe late 20s. Her face was peaceful despite the circumstances, as if she'd learned to find rest wherever she could. "Excuse me," Derek said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Miss?" Her eyes opened immediately, alert but not frightened. She sat up slowly, pulling the wet blanket around her shoulders. In the dim streetlight, Derek noticed something unexpected: dignity. Despite everything, there was no desperation in her eyes, only caution. "Are you okay?" Derek asked. "Do you need help?" "I'm fine, sir," Naomi replied, her voice steady despite the cold that made her words come out in visible puffs. "Just resting." Derek glanced at the rain now soaking through her blanket, then back at her face. "In the rain? Come on, at least take the umbrella." He extended it toward her. Naomi didn't reach for it. "I don't accept charity." The words caught Derek off guard. He'd expected gratitude, maybe even desperation. Instead, this woman sleeping on a street corner was turning down his help. Something about her refusal intrigued him more than acceptance ever could. "Then consider it a loan," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips despite the grim situation. Naomi studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was mocking her or genuine. "A loan," she repeated slowly. "Yes. You can return it when you're done with it." Derek looked around the deserted street. "Look, there's a 24-hour cafe 2 blocks down. Let me at least get you something hot to drink. No strings attached. Just one human being helping another on a terrible night." "Why?" Naomi asked, the single word carrying the weight of every disappointment life had handed her. Derek hesitated. Why was he doing this? He could have stayed in his car, waited for his driver in comfortable isolation, but something about her reminded him of Rebecca's strength, of the way his wife had faced impossible circumstances with grace. "Because someone should," he said finally, "and I'm here." Naomi's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. She stood slowly, her joints stiff from the cold concrete. She was shorter than Derek had expected, and the mustard-yellow dress she wore beneath her blanket was clean but worn thin from too many washings. "Just coffee," she said. "Nothing more?" "Just coffee," Derek agreed. They walked in silence to the cafe, Derek holding the umbrella over both of them. The warmth of the fluorescent-lit diner was jarring after the cold rain. The lone employee behind the counter barely glanced at them as Derek ordered 2 large black coffees and a couple of sandwiches. "I said just coffee," Naomi reminded him. "The sandwiches are for me," Derek lied smoothly. "I haven't eaten since lunch." They sat in a corner booth, steam rising from their cups between them. Derek found himself curious about this woman who slept on streets but spoke with such careful dignity. "I'm Derek," he offered. "Naomi." She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, and Derek noticed how her fingers trembled slightly from the cold. "What do you do, Naomi? I mean, during the day?" "I clean offices," she said simply, meeting his eyes. 3 different buildings. I work hard. I show up on time. I just don't have a place to go when the work is done." There was no self-pity in her voice, just statement of fact. Derek found himself wanting to know more. How did someone who clearly took pride in her work end up on the streets? But before he could ask, his phone buzzed. His driver. "I'm here, Mr. Ashford. Market and 15th?" Derek looked at Naomi, then at the sandwich she'd barely touched, knowing she was waiting for him to leave so she could eat it without witnesses to her hunger. "I have to go," he said, standing. He pulled out his wallet and placed a $50 bill on the table. Before Naomi could protest, he added, "For the umbrella loan, consider it collateral until you return it." "I know. You don't accept charity, so prove it. Bring the umbrella back." Derek pulled a business card from his wallet and placed it next to the money. "Ashford Technologies. Any day this week. Ask for me at the front desk." Naomi picked up the card, studying it in the harsh cafe light. Her eyes widened slightly as she read the name. "You're Derek Ashford?" "The Derek Ashford?" "Just a man whose car broke down at the right time," Derek said. "Or maybe the wrong time. I haven't decided yet." He left before she could respond, stepping back into the rain without his umbrella. As his driver pulled away from the curb, Derek looked back at the cafe. Through the window, he could see Naomi still sitting there, staring at his business card as if it were a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. For the first time in 3 years, Derek felt something other than the numbing routine of grief and work. He felt curious, intrigued, almost hopeful. He couldn't stop thinking about her all the way home. Most people would have driven past. Most people would have looked away. But Derek didn't. And that's the difference between existing and actually living. If this is hitting you different right now, subscribe. Because this story is just getting started. 3 days later, Derek found himself driving down Market Street at 5:30 in the morning. He'd told himself it was on his way to the office. A lie, since his estate in Chestnut Hill was in the opposite direction. He'd spent those 3 days researching Philadelphia's homeless crisis, reading statistics about how many people slept on streets despite working full-time jobs. The numbers had shocked him. The faces in the articles had haunted him. But it was Naomi's face he kept seeing. He parked half a block away and watched as she emerged from the 24-hour burger joint, her cleaning uniform crisp and neat, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She carried the umbrella he'd given her, now folded neatly under her arm. Derek noticed she walked with purpose. Her head held high despite returning to a cardboard bed. There was something remarkable about someone who maintained dignity when the world had stripped away everything else. Derek stepped out of his car. "Naomi?" She turned, surprise flickering across her face, before settling into that same cautious composure he'd seen 3 nights ago. "Mr. Ashford, I was going to return your umbrella. I just—" "Keep it," Derek said, walking toward her. "That's not why I'm here." Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then why are you here?" Derek took a breath, suddenly aware of how absurd this might sound. I have a proposition for you, a job offer. I have 3 jobs. I know, and nowhere to go when they're finished. Derek kept his voice gentle. I need a housekeeper, someone to manage my estate in Chestnut Hill. It's a full-time position with fair wages, and it includes staff quarters, your own room, your own space. Naomi's expression hardened. I don't want charity. I want dignity. This isn't charity, it's employment. Derek ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the right words. My house is too big, too empty. I eat takeout every night because I can't remember the last time I used my kitchen. I haven't done laundry properly in months. I need help, Naomi. Real help. Why me? Naomi's voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through her careful composure. You could hire any professional service. There are agencies full of experienced housekeepers who actually have references, backgrounds, credentials. Why would you offer this to someone you found sleeping on a street corner? Derek met her eyes, and for a moment, he considered lying, making it about convenience or impulse, but something about Naomi demanded honesty. Because you remind me of someone who never gave up either, he said quietly. My wife. She fought cancer for 2 years. Every day was harder than the last. But she never stopped showing up, never stopped trying. I see that same strength in you. You've lost everything, but you still get up at 5 a.m. to go to work. You still keep your uniform clean. You still maintain your dignity, even when the world tells you you don't deserve any. Naomi's throat tightened. For a moment, her carefully constructed walls wavered. Men like you don't just help people like me without wanting something, she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. Maybe I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only want something from me, Derek replied. Maybe I'm tired of a house that echoes with emptiness. Maybe I just want to do one decent thing in a life that's felt pretty meaningless lately. They stood in silence as the morning traffic began to pick up around them. Naomi looked down at the business card still in her pocket, the one she'd been carrying for 3 days. I need time to think, she finally said. Of course. Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out another card, this one with his personal cell phone number written on the back. Take all the time you need. Call me if you're interested, or if you're not. Either way, I hope you'll let me know. Naomi took the card, her fingers brushing his briefly. Thank you for the offer, for treating me like a person instead of a problem. You're not a problem, Naomi. You're someone who deserves a chance. Derek walked back to his car, resisting the urge to look back. He'd made his offer. The rest was up to her. Here's what most people miss about second chances. They're not gifts. They're tests. Tests of whether you'll accept help when you need it most. If you've ever had to swallow your pride to survive, let me know in the comments. This community gets it. That afternoon, Naomi stood outside the Philadelphia Free Library, Derek's business card clutched in her hand. She'd finished her morning shifts and had 2 hours before her evening job. She climbed the stone steps and found a computer station in the far corner. Her search for Derek Ashford returned hundreds of results. Tech billionaire, self-made entrepreneur. Ashford Technologies valued at over $2 billion. But it was the other articles that made Naomi pause, the ones about the Rebecca Ashford Cancer Research Foundation, funded entirely by Derek after his wife's death. The interviews where he'd spoken about grief, about trying to turn personal tragedy into something that might help others. She found photos of Rebecca, a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a radiant smile, even in pictures clearly taken during her illness. Derek stood beside her in every photo, his hand always holding hers, his expression a mixture of love and barely concealed anguish. Because you remind me of someone who never gave up either. Naomi's fingers trembled as she scrolled through article after article. No scandals, no controversies. Just a man who'd built an empire and lost the person who mattered most. A man who'd turned his grief into a foundation that had helped thousands of cancer patients receive treatment they couldn't otherwise afford. She clicked on one final article, a recent profile in Philadelphia magazine. The journalist had asked Derek what he wanted his legacy to be. His answer was simple: "I want to be remembered as someone who helped when he could." Naomi closed the browser and sat back in her chair. Every instinct told her this was too good to be true, that accepting help from a stranger would cost her something she couldn't afford to lose. But another voice, the one that sounded like her mother, whispered that sometimes grace appears in unexpected forms. She pulled out her phone and stared at Derek's number for a long moment. Then she made a different call. The next morning, Derek was in his office when Monica buzzed him. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. A woman named Naomi Brooks. She says she doesn't have an appointment, but she's asking for you specifically. Should I send her away?" Derek's heart kicked unexpectedly. "No, send her to HR. Tell them I'm authorizing a formal employment interview. I'll be down in 5 minutes." He stood at his office window, looking out at the Philadelphia skyline, and allowed himself a small smile. She'd come. Naomi sat across from Derek in the HR conference room, a folder of documents between them. She'd spent her lunch break at the library again, researching fair wages for estate housekeepers in the Philadelphia area. She came prepared. "Before we proceed," Naomi said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I have some conditions." Derek leaned back in his chair, intrigued. "I'm listening." "First, I want a proper employment contract, not a handshake deal. Not a verbal agreement. A legal document that outlines my responsibilities, working hours, and compensation. Of course. Second, I want fair market wages. I researched the going rate for estate housekeepers in Chestnut Hill. I'm asking for that amount, plus health insurance after a 90-day probationary period." Derek nodded, impressed. "Reasonable." Naomi took a breath before continuing. "Third, I want a separate staff entrance to the quarters. Professional boundaries. I work for you, Mr. Ashford. I need that to be clear. To both of us." "Anything else?" "Yes." Naomi met his eyes directly. "I need you to understand why I'm accepting this offer. I'm tired of being cold. I'm tired of washing up in restaurant bathrooms and wondering if someone's going to steal my belongings while I sleep. But I won't be anybody's charity case. I'll earn every dollar you pay me. I'll work harder than any housekeeper you could hire from an agency. And the moment this arrangement doesn't work for either of us, I'll leave with my dignity intact. Are we clear?" A slow smile spread across Derek's face. "Crystal clear. And for what it's worth, I think you're going to be the best decision I've made in 3 years." "Don't say that yet," Naomi replied, but something in her expression had softened. "You haven't seen me try to figure out how your espresso machine works." Derek laughed, a genuine surprised sound that felt foreign to his own ears. "Deal! I'll teach you the espresso machine." "This right here?" This is what self-respect looks like. Naomi's not begging, she's negotiating. She's not accepting charity, she's demanding dignity. If that resonates with you, smash that subscribe button, because we're about to see what happens when broken people choose to rebuild together. 2 hours later, they pulled through the gates of Derek's Chestnut Hill estate. Naomi pressed her face closer to the window, taking in the sprawling stone mansion, the manicured lawns, the fountain in the circular driveway. It looked like something from a magazine, beautiful and impossibly distant from the cardboard corner where she'd slept just that morning. "It's too big for one person," Derek said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Rebecca used to say we should fill it with children. We were going to. Before—" He stopped, clearing his throat. "Anyway, it's just me now, and it feels more like a museum than a home." Derek led her through the main entrance, past rooms with high ceilings and furniture covered in dust sheets. They walked through the chef's kitchen, with its unused Viking stove, the library with its untouched books, the dining room where one lonely place setting sat at a table meant for 12. Finally, they reached a separate wing at the back of the house. Derek opened a door to reveal a small suite, bedroom, bathroom, and sitting area with a kitchenette. It was simple but clean, with a window overlooking the garden. "Staff quarters," Derek said. "It has its own entrance through that door, so you can come and go without walking through the main house. Is it acceptable?" Naomi stepped inside, running her hand along the dresser, the back of the upholstered chair. She walked into the bedroom and stared at the bed, a real bed with clean sheets and a thick comforter. 6 months. 6 months since she'd slept on anything but concrete. "It's perfect," she whispered. "I'll let you get settled. Take the rest of the day. You can start tomorrow morning if that works." After Derek left, Naomi sat on the edge of the bed, barely breathing. She was afraid that if she moved too fast, the whole thing would disappear like a dream. Slowly, carefully, she lay back against the pillows. The tears came without warning. Deep, wrenching sobs that she'd been holding back for 6 months. She cried for Elijah, for her mother, for the nursing career she'd lost, for every cold night and hungry morning. But somewhere beneath the grief, there was something else. Something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. That night, Naomi slept in a real bed for the first time in half a year. She slept deeply, dreamlessly, like someone finally allowed to breathe. The next morning, Derek woke to the smell of fresh coffee. He came downstairs at 6:30 a.m. to find the kitchen already immaculate. Breakfast laid out on the counter. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit arranged neatly on one of the fine china plates he'd forgotten he owned. Naomi stood by the coffee maker, wearing simple black pants and a white button-down shirt, her hair pulled back professionally. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford," she said. "I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of making breakfast." "Mind? I can't remember the last time anyone cooked in this kitchen." Derek poured himself coffee, noting how she'd already learned exactly how much cream he preferred. "And please, call me Derek." "At work, you're Mr. Ashford," Naomi said firmly. "Professional boundaries, remember?" Over the following weeks, Derek watched as Naomi transformed his house. She worked with quiet efficiency, arriving early and staying late. Dust sheets came off furniture, windows gleamed. The chef's kitchen came alive with the smell of proper meals. She organized his chaotic home office, fixed the broken fountain in the garden, and even convinced him to donate the clothes he'd been hoarding from Rebecca's illness. The ones he couldn't bear to wear, but couldn't throw away. Derek found himself working from home more often, though he wouldn't admit why. He'd hear Naomi humming while she worked, catch glimpses of her reading during her lunch break in the library. Once he walked in to find her curled up in the window seat with a worn nursing textbook. "Still studying?" he asked. Naomi looked up, slightly embarrassed. "Old habits. I keep hoping maybe someday—" She trailed off, closing the book. "Someday isn't as far away as you think," Derek said softly. Their conversations during coffee breaks became the highlight of his day. Small exchanges about books, about Philadelphia, about nothing and everything. Derek realized he was smiling more, sleeping better, feeling less like a ghost haunting his own life. Naomi was restoring more than his house. She was restoring something in him he'd thought died with Rebecca. The possibility of feeling alive again. 6 weeks after Naomi arrived, Julian Ashford pulled through the gates of his brother's estate unannounced. He'd been making excuses to avoid visiting. Too busy with work, Ivy had soccer practice, traffic was terrible. The truth was simpler and more painful. He couldn't stand seeing the empty shell his brother had become after Rebecca's death. But today, Julian had finally run out of excuses. He rang the doorbell, expecting the usual lengthy wait before Derek answered, distracted and disheveled. Instead, the door opened almost immediately. A woman he'd never seen before stood there, African-American, late 20s, professionally dressed in simple black pants and a white shirt. "Good afternoon," she said with a warm smile. You must be Mr. Julian. Derek mentioned you might stop by. Please come in. Julian stepped inside, and his jaw nearly dropped. The house that had been drowning in dust and depression for 3 years, was transformed. Sunlight streamed through clean windows. Fresh flowers sat on the hall table. The air smelled like lemon polish and something baking in the kitchen. "I'm Naomi," the woman said. "I'm the housekeeper. Derek is in his study. Can I get you some coffee while you wait?" "No, I'll just—" Julian stopped as Derek emerged from the study, and the shock deepened. His brother was smiling. Actually smiling. He looked rested, healthy, like someone who'd remembered how to sleep. "Jules!" Derek embraced him. "This is a surprise. Everything okay?" "Yeah, I just wanted to check in." Julian's eyes darted between Derek and Naomi, who had quietly excused herself to the kitchen. "Can we talk? Privately?" In Derek's study, Julian didn't waste time. "Where did you find her?" "Naomi? She answered a job posting." "Cut it, Derek. Where did you really find her? How much do you actually know about her?" Derek's expression cooled. "She's an excellent employee. The house has never looked better. I'm eating real meals for the first time in years. She's been in your house for 6 weeks, living here, with access to everything you own." Julian leaned forward. "Do you even know her last name? Where she came from? Do you have references, background checks, anything?" "Her name is Naomi Brooks, and yes, I know her story. She's had a difficult few years, but she's proven herself to be—" "Difficult how?" Julian pressed. "What kind of difficult? Derek, you're one of the wealthiest men in Pennsylvania. You can't just hire random people off the street without—" "I didn't hire her off the street. I hired her because she needed a chance, and because I needed someone who wasn't going to treat me like I'm made of glass." Derek's voice hardened. "What's this really about? Jules?" Julian stood, frustration evident in every line of his body. "It's about the fact that you're finally coming back to life, and I'm terrified that someone's going to take advantage of that. Promise me you'll be careful. That's all I'm asking." Family. Sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest, trying to protect you. If you've ever been caught between trusting someone new and disappointing someone old, you know exactly how this feels. Drop a comment if you've been here. But Julian couldn't let it go. 2 days later, he sat in his car outside a private investigator's office in downtown Philadelphia, a manila folder on his lap. Inside was everything Gordon Reese had been able to dig up on Naomi Brooks. And it wasn't good. Julian flipped through the pages. The house fire that killed her brother, her mother's death, and then, there it was. A lawsuit filed against her former landlord, Richard Kowalski. The case had been settled out of court. Julian's stomach twisted. She was litigious. She sued people. What if she was setting Derek up? What if she'd orchestrated this whole thing? The helpless victim routine, the perfect employee act, just to get close to Derek's money? He pulled out his phone and called Derek. "I'm coming over. We need to talk. Now." Meanwhile, at the estate, Naomi sat at the kitchen table, helping a 10-year-old girl with her math homework. Ivy Ashford, Julian's daughter, had shown up an hour earlier, dropped off by her father with barely a word to Naomi. "I still don't get fractions," Ivy groaned, erasing her answer for the 3rd time. "Okay, think of it like this," Naomi said patiently. She grabbed 2 cookies from the plate on the table. "If I break this cookie in half and give you 1 piece, what fraction do you have?" Ivy's face lit up. 1/2! Exactly. Now, if we break each half into 2 more pieces, I'd have 4 pieces total, and each piece would be 1/4. Ivy grinned triumphantly. "That makes so much more sense than how my teacher explained it." Naomi smiled. "You're really smart, Ivy. You just needed to see it differently." "Were you a teacher?" Ivy asked, taking a bite of her cookie reward. "No, but I was studying to be a nurse. I wanted to work with kids, actually. Pediatric nursing. Why did you stop? Naomi's smile faltered. Life happened, but maybe someday I'll go back. Ivy studied her seriously. I wish you were my aunt. Then you could help me with homework all the time. And we could bake cookies, and you'd come to my soccer games. The simple wish pierced Naomi's heart. That's very sweet, Ivy. Before Ivy could respond, they heard raised voices from Derek's study. Julian had arrived. She sued her last landlord, Julian said, throwing the folder onto Derek's desk. Filed a lawsuit against Richard Kowalski 18 months ago. Settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. She's been in your house for 6 weeks, Derek. She could sue you for anything. Wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination. She could claim you promised her things, made advances. Get rid of her before she destroys everything we've built. Derek picked up the folder, his jaw tight. He read through the investigator's report, his expression darkening with each page. You hired a private investigator, Derek said slowly, his voice dangerously quiet. You went behind my back and investigated Naomi. To protect you. Derek, use your head. This woman saved my life, Derek interrupted. She gave me a reason to come home. She made this place feel like a home again. And you. He looked at his brother with disappointment that cut deeper than anger. You violated her privacy. You treated her like a criminal. Or maybe she had a legitimate reason, Derek said, cutting him off. Did you consider that? Did your investigator mention that the fire wasn't her fault? That she won that lawsuit because her landlord's negligence killed her 12-year-old brother? Julian faltered. The report didn't. Of course it didn't, because you were looking for evidence of guilt, not truth. Derek stood, the folder clenched in his hand. Get out, Jules. I need to talk to Naomi. As Julian left, passing Ivy and Naomi in the kitchen, Derek stood alone in his study, staring at the investigator's report. He had to hear the truth from Naomi herself, even if it broke the fragile trust they'd built. Derek found Naomi in the kitchen, wiping down counters that were already spotless. She moved mechanically, her usual grace replaced by rigid tension. She knew. Somehow, she already knew. Naomi, Derek said quietly, the investigator's folder still in his hand. We need to talk. She turned, and her eyes went immediately to the folder. Her expression didn't change. No surprise, no fear. Just a weary resignation that made Derek's chest ache. So you had me investigated, she said. It wasn't a question. My brother did. Without my knowledge or permission. Derek set the folder on the counter between them. But I need to hear it from you. The fire. The lawsuit. All of it. Naomi dried her hands on a towel, taking her time, gathering herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. 18 months ago, I lived in a rundown apartment building in North Philadelphia with my mother and my 12-year-old brother, Elijah. The landlord, Richard Kowalski, had been cited multiple times for code violations. Faulty wiring, broken smoke detectors, blocked fire exits. We complained. He ignored us. She paused, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. One night, the wiring in the wall caught fire. The smoke detectors didn't work. The fire exits were chained shut because Kowalski was afraid of break-ins. My mother and I got out through a window. Elijah didn't. He died from smoke inhalation in his sleep. Derek felt the words like physical blows, but he stayed silent, letting her continue. After Elijah's funeral, I found out Kowalski had bribed the city inspector to overlook the violations. So yes, I sued him, and I won. The settlement barely covered my brother's funeral expenses and my mother's medical bills from smoke inhalation. 6 months later, my mother died. The doctors called it a heart attack, but I know better. She died of a broken heart. Naomi met Derek's eyes directly, unflinching. I'm not hiding anything. My life fell apart, but I'm still standing. That's not something to be ashamed of. If you want me to leave because of my past, I'll go. But I won't apologize for fighting for justice for my brother. Naomi? Derek moved toward her, but she held up a hand. I understand. Your brother was trying to protect you, and maybe he's right. Maybe someone like me doesn't belong in a place like this. Stop, Derek said firmly. Just stop. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm apologizing for doubting you, even for a second. Julian was wrong, and I was wrong for not telling him to go to hell the moment he suggested you were anything other than exactly who you've shown yourself to be. Truth is the hardest thing to speak when you've been judged your whole life for circumstances beyond your control. If Naomi's courage is giving you courage right now, let me hear it in the comments. And if you're not subscribed, this is your moment. Because what happens next will restore your faith in people. Before Naomi could respond, Derek's phone rang. Julian's name flashed on the screen. Derek answered, putting it on speaker. Derek, listen, I've been thinking, maybe I overreacted. You didn't overreact, Jules. You violated someone's privacy, made accusations without knowing the full story, and treated a woman who lost everything like she was a con artist. Naomi Brooks is the best thing that's happened to this house, to me, in 3 years. And if you can't respect that, then you're not welcome here. There was a long silence. Then Julian's voice, quieter. You're right. I'm sorry. I was scared of losing you again, and I handled it terribly. Can I talk to her? To apologize? Derek looked at Naomi. She shook her head slightly, tears glistening in her eyes. Not now, Derek said. Give her some time. He ended the call and set the phone down. Naomi, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. But her voice cracked on the last word, and she turned away, her shoulders trembling. That night, Derek couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., he got up for water and saw a light under Naomi's door. He knocked softly. Come in, came her voice, small and tired. Derek opened the door to find Naomi sitting on her bed, her few belongings spread around her, halfway packed into her worn backpack. What are you doing? Derek asked, though the answer was obvious and devastating. What I should have done from the beginning, Naomi said without looking up. I knew this was temporary. People like me don't get to stay in places like this. It was foolish to think otherwise. Naomi, please. Your brother was right to investigate me. I'm a liability. A homeless woman with a tragic past and a lawsuit on her record. I don't fit in your world, Derek. Today proved that. Derek crossed the room and sat beside her on the bed, close enough that their shoulders touched. My wife died 3 years ago, he said quietly. And for 3 years, I've been emotionally dead. Just going through the motions, building companies, making money, doing everything except actually living. Naomi finally looked at him, confusion in her eyes. Then you showed up, Derek continued. You've lost everything, your family, your home, your dreams, everything that mattered. And yet you still wake up with kindness. You still show up. You still fight. You help a little girl with her homework. You make sure I eat real meals. You bring light into a house that's been dark for so long. His voice broke slightly. I don't want you to leave because I need the house clean. I want you to stay because I need to remember how to be alive again. And you, somehow, you're teaching me that. Just by being here. Just by being you. Naomi's tears spilled over. I'm scared, Derek. Scared that I'm starting to feel safe here. Scared that I'm starting to hope again. Because every time I've hoped for something, it's been taken away. I'm scared too, Derek admitted. Scared that I'm feeling something other than grief for the first time in years. Scared of what that means. But maybe... He reached out and gently took her hand. Maybe being scared together is better than being numb alone. Naomi looked at their joined hands, then at the half-packed bag, then back at Derek. Slowly, she began taking her belongings out of the backpack, placing them back in the dresser. Neither of them spoke as she unpacked. When she finished, they sat together in the quiet, still holding hands, both terrified and both hoping. Outside, the first light of dawn began to break through the darkness. And inside, two broken people chose to keep trying. Together. 2 weeks passed in cautious peace. Julian had stayed away, giving everyone space to heal. But on a sunny Sunday afternoon, he finally worked up the courage to visit, bringing Ivy with him as a peace offering. "Uncle Derek!" Ivy burst through the front door and wrapped her arms around Derek's waist. "Daddy says you have a garden with real butterflies." Derek smiled, ruffling her hair. "I do. Want to see?" Naomi watched from the kitchen doorway as Derek led Ivy outside, Julian following behind. She caught Julian's eye briefly. He nodded, awkward but genuine, and she nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start. Through the window, Naomi could see Ivy chasing butterflies through the flower beds, her laughter carrying on the breeze. Derek and Julian stood nearby, talking quietly. There was tension in Julian's shoulders, but Derek's posture had softened. Maybe families could heal too. Naomi turned back to the lemon bars she was baking. Ivy's favorite, Derek had mentioned. She was sliding the pan into the oven when she heard the scream. She ran. In the garden, Ivy was on the ground, clutching her arm. A bee crawled away through the grass. Julian was already kneeling beside his daughter, panic in his eyes. "It stung me," Ivy cried. "It hurts." "It's okay, baby," Julian soothed. "It's just a bee sting. You'll be fine." But Naomi saw what Julian missed. Ivy's face was turning red. Her breathing was becoming labored. Her eyes were starting to swell. "Move!" Naomi said sharply, dropping to her knees beside Ivy. She grabbed the girl's wrist, checking her pulse, racing, too fast. "Ivy, honey, are you allergic to bees?" I don't know," Ivy gasped, her chest heaving. "Can't breathe." "She's going into anaphylactic shock," Naomi said, looking up at Derek. "Call 911, now. Tell them we have a pediatric patient with severe allergic reaction, possible anaphylaxis." Derek was already on his phone, his voice urgent but controlled as he gave the address. Julian stared at his daughter, frozen. "What's happening? What's wrong with her?" "Her throat is swelling," Naomi explained, keeping her voice calm even as her mind raced through her nursing training. "Do you have an EpiPen in the house?" "No, we didn't know. She's never been stung before." "Derek, first aid kit," Naomi commanded. "The big one from the house. Hurry." Derek sprinted inside. Naomi cradled Ivy's head, keeping her airway as open as possible. The girl's lips were turning blue. "Ivy, listen to me," Naomi said, her voice firm but gentle. "I need you to stay calm. I know it's scary, but panicking will make it worse. Take slow breaths with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Can you do that?" Ivy nodded weakly, her eyes wide with terror. "That's my brave girl. Keep breathing. The ambulance is coming. You're going to be okay." This is the moment everything Naomi lost. Her education, her future, her purpose, all comes rushing back. 3 years of nursing school, 6 months of sleeping on streets, and right now, in this garden, it all matters. If you're holding your breath, that subscribe button is right there. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Derek returned with the first aid kit. Naomi's hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling out antihistamine tablets. "Ivy, I need you to let these dissolve under your tongue. They'll help until the paramedics get here." "How far away?" Naomi asked Derek. 15 minutes, maybe more." 15 minutes. Too long. Naomi could see Ivy's breathing getting worse, her chest working harder with each breath. She turned to Julian, who looked like he might collapse. "Mr. Ashford, I need you to listen to me. Ivy needs you to be strong right now. Hold her hand. Talk to her. Keep her awake and calm." Julian snapped out of his paralysis and grabbed his daughter's hand. "I'm here, baby. Daddy's here. You're going to be fine. Tell me about your soccer game yesterday. Did you score?" Ivy tried to answer but couldn't speak. The panic in her eyes intensified. Naomi checked her pulse again. Weaker. She was running out of time. Derek, elevate her legs. We need to keep blood flowing to her vital organs. Naomi positioned Ivy's head carefully, monitoring her breathing. She'd seen this before during her clinical rotations, knew that without an EpiPen, the next few minutes were critical. "Stay with me, Ivy," Naomi said, checking the girl's pupils. "Keep your eyes on me. That's it. You're doing great." The minutes crawled by like hours. Naomi kept up a steady stream of calm instructions, monitoring every symptom, ready to perform CPR if Ivy's heart stopped. Julian held his daughter's hand, tears streaming down his face. Derek stood ready to act on Naomi's every command. Finally, sirens. The paramedics rushed into the garden with their equipment. Naomi quickly briefed them. 10-year-old female, bee sting to right forearm approximately 8 minutes ago. Presenting with facial swelling, difficulty breathing, rapid weak pulse. I've administered oral antihistamine. No known previous allergies, no EpiPen available. The lead paramedic looked at her sharply. "You medical?" "Nursing student. 3 years completed." "Good instincts. You probably saved her life." They administered epinephrine, and within seconds, Ivy's breathing began to ease. The swelling started to recede. Color returned to her lips. Julian sobbed with relief. At the hospital, after Ivy had been stabilized and admitted for observation, Julian found Naomi in the waiting room. She sat alone, still in her grass-stained clothes, her hands trembling now that the crisis had passed. "Naomi," Julian said softly. He sat down beside her, and she saw he'd been crying. "The doctors said if you hadn't acted so quickly, if you hadn't kept her calm and given her the antihistamine, they said Ivy might not have made it." Naomi's own tears finally came. "I'm just glad she's okay." Julian pulled the investigation folder from his jacket, the one that had caused so much pain. He held it out to her. "This was my fear, not your guilt. I was terrified that Derek was replacing Rebecca, afraid of losing my brother to his grief, or to someone new, someone I didn't know, couldn't control." He tore the folder in half. "But you saved my daughter's life. You're not a threat. You're a blessing. And I'm so sorry for making you feel like anything less." Naomi took his hand. "You were protecting your family. I understand that. Can you forgive me?" "Already have." The door opened and Derek appeared. "You can see her now. She's asking for you, Naomi." In the hospital room, Ivy lay propped up on pillows, her face still slightly puffy, but her breathing normal. When she saw Naomi, she smiled. "Daddy says you saved my life," Ivy said. "He says you're a hero." Naomi sat on the edge of the bed, brushing Ivy's hair back gently. "You're the hero. You were so brave." "Will you visit me?" Ivy asked. "I have to stay overnight, and hospitals are scary." Naomi looked at Derek and Julian, who both nodded. "I'll stay as long as you need me," Naomi promised. And she did, sitting by Ivy's bed as the girl fell asleep, Derek on one side and Julian on the other. 3 people who'd been strangers months ago. Now bound together by crisis and care. A family formed not by blood, but by choice. 2 weeks after Ivy's emergency, Naomi was folding laundry in the utility room when Derek appeared in the doorway, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Naomi, do you have a minute? I need to talk to you in my study." Her stomach dropped. Those words, "we need to talk," never led anywhere good. Had he decided the risk was too much? That having someone with her past around was too complicated after what happened with Julian? "Of course," she said, setting down the towel she'd been folding. Derek's study was warm, afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. On the desk sat a manila folder, and Naomi's heart sank further. Not another investigation. "Before you panic," Derek said, catching her expression. "This isn't what you think." He slid the folder across the desk. Naomi opened it with trembling hands. Inside was paperwork from Temple University, financial aid forms, scholarship documentation, registration materials for the spring semester nursing program. Naomi stared at the papers, unable to process what she was seeing. "It's a full scholarship," Derek said quietly. "Tuition, books, fees, everything you need to complete your nursing degree. It's funded anonymously through the Rebecca Ashford Foundation, so there's no connection to me if you don't want there to be." "Derek, I can't. You can stay and work while you study, or you can leave and never see me again. Either way, you get to finish what you started. You get your life back." The words blurred on the page as tears filled Naomi's eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Derek leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. "When Rebecca was dying, she made me promise something. She said, 'Derek, you're going to want to close yourself off after I'm gone. Don't. When you can help someone climb, you don't ask if they deserve it. You just reach down your hand.'" He met Naomi's eyes. "I've been failing that promise for 3 years, until I met you." "This isn't about us," Derek continued. "This is about you becoming who you were meant to be. You saved Ivy's life because you had 3 years of nursing training. Imagine how many more people you'll save with a degree. Imagine the pediatric oncology ward you told Ivy about. Those kids need someone like you. Someone who understands loss and still chooses compassion." Some people will watch this and think Derek's being a hero, but he's not. He's just doing what more people should do, seeing potential in someone and investing in it. If this is making you emotional, you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe, because this story is about to come full circle in the most beautiful way. Naomi couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They fell freely, splashing onto the scholarship papers. "I don't know how to repay this." "Don't repay it," Derek said firmly. "Pay it forward someday when you're Nurse Brooks. Help someone else climb. That's all Rebecca would have asked. It's all I'm asking." Naomi stood on shaking legs and walked around the desk. Derek stood too, and she wrapped her arms around him, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had been spinning for too long. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me. Not what happened to me, but me." Derek held her carefully, as if she were something precious that might break. "You're easy to see, Naomi. You're the brightest thing in this house." They stood like that for a long moment, the afternoon sun warming them both, neither wanting to let go. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Naomi registered for spring semester classes, bought her first new textbooks in nearly 2 years, and set up a study space in the library. Derek insisted she stay at the estate. "You need a quiet place to study," he argued when she tried to protest. "And besides, someone has to make sure I eat vegetables." Their relationship shifted subtly. Morning coffee became longer, turning into conversations about her anatomy class, his latest business deal, books they'd both read. Naomi studied at the kitchen table, while Derek worked on his laptop across from her, both comfortable in the shared silence. Julian visited regularly now, usually with Ivy, who'd appointed herself Naomi's biggest fan. "When you're a real nurse, will you work at my school?" Ivy asked one afternoon, while Naomi quizzed herself on cardiovascular terminology. "Maybe," Naomi smiled. "Would you be my first patient?" "Only if I don't have to get shots." One evening in early December, Naomi found Derek standing in Rebecca's garden, a section of the estate she'd restored but he'd avoided. He stood before a stone bench with a bronze plaque, "Rebecca's Garden, where hope grows." "She planted all of this herself," Derek said as Naomi approached. "Told me that gardens were proof that beautiful things could grow from dirt and darkness." Naomi sat on the bench, and Derek joined her. "I think she'd like what you're doing," Derek said. "The scholarship, going back to school, becoming the nurse you were meant to be." "I think she'd like what you're doing too," Naomi replied. "Learning to live again." Derek turned to her, and something passed between them, something unspoken but undeniable. Not just gratitude or friendship, but something deeper. Something that felt like the beginning of healing. "The spring semester starts in 3 weeks," Naomi said softly. "I know. Things are going to change. I know that too." Derek took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we're both finally ready for something new." The next morning, Naomi's acceptance letter arrived, official, embossed, real. She was a Temple University nursing student again. Her name was back on the roster. Her future was waiting. Derek found her in the kitchen, staring at the letter with tears streaming down her face. "Happy tears?" he asked. "The happiest," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, and they stood there together. Two people who'd lost everything, now holding on to something precious and new. 3 weeks until classes started. 3 weeks until Naomi Brooks began the journey back to becoming who she'd always meant to be. And standing beside her every step of the way would be the man who'd seen her on her worst day and chosen to believe in her best tomorrow. 6 months later, Naomi stood on Market Street near 15th, a small bouquet of white roses in her hand. The April evening was mild, nothing like the cold October rain that had soaked through her blanket on this same corner half a year ago. She knelt down and placed the flowers on the spot where her cardboard bed used to be. "I made it," she whispered to the concrete, to the memory of the woman she'd been. "I'm still here." "I thought I'd find you here." Naomi turned to see Derek approaching, hands in his pockets, a soft smile on his face. He looked different than he had that rainy night. Lighter somehow, as if he'd finally set down a weight he'd been carrying too long. "How did you know?" Naomi asked. "Because I come here sometimes too." Derek stood beside her, looking down at the flowers. "This corner. It's where I stopped running from my life. Where I started living again." They stood in companionable silence, watching the evening traffic pass. So much had changed. Naomi had finished her first semester with straight A's, balancing her studies with part-time work at the estate, though their relationship had evolved far beyond employer and employee. They were friends now, partners in healing. "I never want to forget what cold feels like," Naomi said quietly, "because it makes me grateful for warmth, for second chances, for you." Derek turned to her, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about something, about what we could do together." "Together?" "You want to work in pediatric oncology, to honor Rebecca by helping kids with cancer. But what about the people still sleeping on corners like this one? What about giving them the same chance I gave you?" Naomi's heart began to race. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, let's build something. A homeless shelter, but not just beds and meals. A real program, job training, healthcare, education. A place that treats people with dignity, not charity. You could design the healthcare protocols. Use everything you're learning." "Derek, that would cost millions." "I have millions, and they've never meant anything until now." He took her hands in his. "Rebecca always said money should build bridges, not walls. Let's build a bridge, together." Tears welled in Naomi's eyes. "You really want to do this?" "I can't think of anything I want more, except maybe seeing you graduate next year as Nurse Brooks." Naomi laughed through her tears. "Then let's do it. Let's build something beautiful. This is what redemption looks like. Not a rescue, not charity, but two broken people choosing to transform their pain into purpose." If you've stuck with this story from the cold corner to this moment, you're part of something special. Subscribe if you haven't, because stories like this, stories about dignity, second chances, and the power of seeing people, these are the stories that change us. The grand opening of the Rebecca and Naomi Hope Center drew crowds from across Philadelphia. The building, a renovated warehouse near Market Street, gleamed in the December sunlight. Derek stood at the podium, but his eyes kept drifting to Naomi, who stood off to the side in her nursing student scrubs, her clinical rotation badge clipped to her pocket. My late wife believed that everyone deserves dignity, Derek said into the microphone. And the woman beside me, Naomi Brooks, taught me what that really means. This center isn't about saving people. It's about giving people the tools to save themselves. The doors opened, and dozens of men and women who'd been sleeping on Philadelphia's streets walked through, into rooms with real beds, a medical clinic, a job training center, a kitchen serving hot meals. Naomi had designed every aspect of the healthcare program, ensuring that people received treatment regardless of their ability to pay. Julian stood with Ivy, both applauding. Ivy ran to Naomi and hugged her. "You did it! You built a whole hospital!" "Not quite a hospital," Naomi laughed, "but close enough." Derek joined them, and as cameras flashed, he leaned close to Naomi. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For teaching me that broken things can be beautiful, including me." Naomi squeezed his hand. "Thank you for not just saving me. Thank you for believing I could save myself." No romantic proposal passed between them that day, no dramatic declarations, but something deeper had formed, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the quiet kind of love that shows up in action rather than words. 1 year later, Temple University's graduation ceremony was packed, but Derek, Julian, and Ivy had arrived early to get front row seats. When Naomi's name was called, Naomi Brooks, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, summa cum laude, they stood and cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium. But it was the next announcement that made Derek's throat tighten with pride. The award for highest clinical scores in the nursing program goes to Naomi Brooks. Naomi walked to the stage, accepting both her diploma and the award plaque. When the dean handed her the microphone for remarks, she looked directly at Derek. "I want to dedicate this to the man who saw me on my worst day and chose to see my best tomorrow. Thank you for the scholarship. Thank you for the opportunity. But most of all, thank you for treating me like I was worth investing in when I'd forgotten my own worth." The audience erupted in applause, but Derek barely heard it over the pounding of his heart. After the ceremony, they celebrated at the Hope Center, where Naomi had already started her first nursing job. She moved through the medical clinic with confidence and grace, checking on patients, distributing medications, offering the kind of compassionate care that came from truly understanding suffering. A young mother approached her, holding a toddler. "Nurse Brooks, thank you for everything. We've been here 3 months now, and my son's asthma is finally under control. I got a job interview next week. We're going to be okay." "You were always going to be okay," Naomi said gently. "You just needed someone to believe it with you." As evening fell, Derek found Naomi in Rebecca's garden at the estate, now in full bloom. She'd changed out of her graduation gown and into comfortable clothes, her nursing degree propped against a flower pot. "Nurse Brooks," Derek said, sitting beside her, "has a nice ring to it." "It does." Naomi leaned her head on his shoulder. "I keep thinking about all the people still out there, on corners like the one where you found me. There's so much work to do." "Then we'll do it. Together." They sat in comfortable silence as stars began to appear overhead. Two people who'd been broken by loss, who'd found each other on a rainy street corner, who'd chosen to heal not by forgetting their pain, but by transforming it into purpose. Naomi never forgot the cold. She never forgot what it felt like to sleep on concrete, to wonder if anyone saw her, if anyone cared. She just made sure others wouldn't have to remember it alone. And in doing so, she proved what Derek's late wife had always known: that dignity, not charity, changes lives. That the best love stories aren't about rescue. They're about two broken people choosing to heal together, and then reaching back to help others climb. The beginning of their story had been marked by loss, but its continuation would be written in hope. Life sometimes breaks you to lead you to the people who will love you the deepest. Your beginning does not decide your destination. Your character does. If this story moved you, if it changed something in you, drop a comment and let me know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, What are you waiting for? This channel is about stories that matter, stories that remind us what it means to be human. I'll see you in the next one.